Good morning. It's Monday, August 9th, and over the weekend, there wasn't really much on TV except some sports and a lot of Olympics, And I was busy working on the computer in the den and the television was on, which I tend to ignore when I'm working on my computer. But this one particular event caught my eye and I happened to watch it. It's called rhythmic gymnastics. And these performers were women, very pretty women, who were tossing a ribbon around. This was the final of 4 steps in which they do dance routines using a hoop, a ball, a pair of clubs, and a ribbon, tossing them around and catching them while dancing and spinning in leotards. Now, I only saw the ribbon performance, and it was spectacular. And the young Israeli girl who had been leading through the entire performance, she was dancing to the music of Havana Gila. Now, in the history of this event, the Russians have won all the gold medals since 2000. They were expected to win the gold and the silver in this event. Competing against this young Israeli girl were identical twin sisters who had won the gold and the silver in 2016. And one of them was the current world rhythmic gymnast champion. So the Russians fully expected that they would win the gold and the silver again this year. But the Israeli was leading the competition going into the ribbon spin. However, it's still a long way to go, and one misstep can cost you everything. And that's what's happened to one of the Russian twins. She had a crimp in one of her ribbons, and she had to replace the ribbon in mid-performance. And I didn't see her doing anything wrong, but the judges felt there was a major error there. So in any event, she lost points and she had dropped out of the competition. And so the Israeli performed very, very well in her last performance in the ribbon. And she made a minor error too. She dropped the ribbon at some point. I didn't even notice it, but the judges, they notice everything. And so the last performer was the Russian, the other twin. And she performed very, very well, but she had to get a monumental score in order to win. Something like 24,165 or something. Well, she did very well, but she also had a misstep somewhere in her performance, and she only got 24,000 points. So she lost by some minuscule fraction. But that set off the Russians accusing the Olympic judges of bias. Now, we've been around a long time, and I don't know that there are too many organizations in this world that are biased toward Israel. So I think that the Russians were just upset and pissed off, and they just went off half-cocked, and they made a mistake in even accusing the judges of bias. One of the high-ranking gymnastics officials from Russia had the nerve to say the following. Said, enough, they got tired of Russia, and the judges decided to support this Israeli woman. I'll tell you something about this Israeli woman. This is no ordinary woman. Her name is Lenoy Ashram, and she has served as an Israeli military secretary since 2017. And she works there every day when she's not performing. Israeli women are required to perform at least 2 years of military service. And she said it's important for her to give her time and energy to her country. So she's not a gymnast who does nothing but gymnastics and rhythmic gymnastics all the time. She is a working woman, working for her country, to keep her country safe. And that should count for something far more than the amount of work you spend in the gym, lifting weights or doing whatever else you do to perform in the Olympics. She's not an amateur athlete. She's a hard-working Israeli citizen. And if they were giving points for that, then the Russians and probably most of the other competitors would be far, far behind her before the event even started. So it irks me when we have a great country like Russia is supposed to be, and I think they've lost their greatness a long time ago, complains because they didn't win a medal, complains because they were the favorites and they couldn't beat this Israeli girl. There have been a lot of upsets in the Olympics. There have always been upsets. Somebody comes out of the woodwork and performs like they've never performed before in their lives. So it's not a disgrace to lose sometimes. And they didn't lose to anybody who was inferior. They lost to somebody who put on a great performance. And these performances are judged on the way that you do them and the level of difficulty. There are difficulty points. It's like diving, when you dive, you get points for difficulty as well as for making a clean splash. Well, let's admit it. The Russian girls didn't make a clean splash. And their minor errors were more major than the Israeli girls' minor errors. After all, she didn't win in the ribbon alone. She was leading in the other three events also. So it was not unexpected that she could win. It wasn't like she came out of nowhere. She had been performing at a world-class level throughout the entire event. So sour grapes. The Russians are just throwing around a lot of sour grapes. And another interesting thing about this event is that you can get as many points as you possibly can get. There's no limit on the amount of points that you can score. So if you cram a bunch of great routines into a 2-minute time span, then you can get more points than anybody else. If you can do that, there used to be a limit on the number of points that anybody could score on difficulty and things. But they rewrote that code in 2016. So if the Russians were behind, then they should have come up with some much more spectacular routines than they did, and they shouldn't have made any mistakes. And then they would have won again. So I think this crying about bias and everything is a big mistake on their part. It makes them look like the sore losers that they are. And there's no turning back from that. And so I'm glad the Israeli girl won. I'm proud of her performance. And I'm lucky that I caught it on TV, or else I wouldn't have had anything to rant about this morning. So there you go, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.